Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 3. And today we're recapping yesterday's fights, Benavidez versus Ellis and Estrada versus Chocolatito. Let's go.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy. Just.
First, let's talk about the opening fight on the DAZN card, Perez versus Raymond Ford, a battle of two young, undefeated prospects. And as you heard me say in previous episodes, this is a good fight. You want to see where your prospects stand. Eventually, you got to put them in against somebody. And this is a great test for Raymond Ford. Actually, it was a great test for Perez as well. Now, I think coming into the fight, everyone expected Raymond Ford to win pretty handedly, but Perez came out hot. He came out strong, he came out fast, and he came out determined. He was determined all fight long, and I think he took the opening 2 or 3 rounds. Now, I thought Raymond Ford swept the latter half of the fight, and I thought he probably eked out a close decision win, but I'm not particularly upset with a split decision draw. Again, this was great showing by both guys. Raymond Ford was able to come from behind a little bit and kind of establish himself in the latter half of the fight. And Perez showed that if he just managed his energy a little bit better, I think he could have made a better case for winning at least some of the rounds in the second half. It just looked he was a little bit gassed going into the latter half of the fight. That was probably due to the case that he came out a little bit too hot early on. You want to come out ready. If you guys remember Raheem Chikayev, a cruiserweight from the mid-2010s, he was similar in the sense he would come out so hot those first 4 rounds, but would blow his entire gas tank. And if you can survive those 4 or 5 rounds, you would beat him. So I think it's really up to the trainer's job to make sure the fighter is aware of the fact that you can't just go out there and blow your entire gas tank. And I can imagine Perez fixing this mistake later on because, again, he did look a little bit tired in the latter half of the fight. But it also could be Raymond Ford. Raymond Ford is a good fighter. He was the favorite going in, and I expected him to beat Perez. He's a sharp boxer. He has a little bit of pop. He's got 3 stoppages in his last 3 fights. So coming into this fight, I actually thought that Raymond Ford would have an easier time with Perez than he did. But again, this is props to Perez and his team in preparing for the fight. And again, Raymond Ford, I thought, did pull away in the second half of the fight, didn't wind up controlling distance, and, was landing the jab. It was really snappy. So I think I can't wait to see more of Raymond Ford. I want to see how Perez changes up his game in his next few fights. So it's always nice to see up-and-coming fighters, young kids, 23 and 21, Raymond being 21 and Perez being 23. So, I think the future looks good for both of them. And I'm really excited to see more of Raymond Ford. Also on the undercard, you had Hiroto Kyojuchi versus Alex Aragon Vega. Now, I will admit that I thought that Vega had no chance. I thought, visually speaking, of course, this is my own bias, and I think we should all admit when we experience them, you're looking at Alex and you're seeing a 4'10" or so guy, small, not too much pop. I didn't see his previous fight against Mendez. So I'm thinking, well, Hirohito's gonna walk him down and stop him. But after the first, I thought Axel stayed on the inside and was winning the fight. He was winning the fight until that injury. He showed some pop. He showed the ability to fight on the inside. He showed a chin. He took Hirohito's best shots. This was quite a fighter, and I underestimated him just by what he looks like, and I think it's a lesson again every day to evaluate the fighters for who they are, not necessarily what they look like. Sure, you can make the argument, there's a height disparity, so maybe a certain fighter is going to fight a different way or has certain advantages. But over here, I had no idea that Axel can fight on the inside as well as he did, and it's really unfortunate that he would look like he broke his hand throwing an overhand right that hit Hiroto right on the temple, and just a freak accident. But he was winning those rounds, and he was able to keep close to Hiroto, which I thought I didn't think he was going to be able to do because Hiroto looked like he was a much faster fighter. Certainly looked like he was a more accurate fighter at distance. But Hirota would allow Vega to sit on the inside, and Vega would throw the shorter shots. And it's not to say that Hiroto's throwing wide shots. It's just they're slightly bit wider, or at least coming from a different angle than Vega's were. Partly because I think his arms are a little bit longer. If you're a long fighter, think Vladimir Klitschko, you want to keep the shorter fighter away because, you want to use your long arms to your advantage. But over here, Vega was able to sit right on top of Hiroto, and it was a good fight. And again, I was really impressed by Vega. I'm going to go back and actually watch his loss to Mendes, which is also, again, for the WBO. Again, a more interesting fight than I imagined. And also, Hiroto Kyoguchi wasn't undefeated or is an undefeated fighter. He came in there with the belt as the champ. This was his American debut. He's only 27. Only 27. I guess for the lightweights, that's a prime fighter. And he didn't look bad. I think it was more the case of Axel looking good and better than I anticipated, rather than Kyoguchi looking worse. You saw that Kyoguchi had good technique, good straight shots, and at distance he did get the better of Vega. But I think he needs to not allow the smaller fighter to sit inside. I think he was a point too stationary and just wanted to rely on catching him with a shot, catching Vega with the shots. I think that needs to get corrected. But again, an interesting fight, intriguing fight, and unfortunately ended with an injury to Vega's hand and a TKO victory for Kyoguchi. I'd like to see a rematch. I really would. Also on the undercard of the Chocolatito fight, we had Austin Williams, the undefeated prospect, taking a unanimous decision over Dennis Mama's Boy Duggan. It was a little bit of a wild fight, but a fun one. Dennis Duggan has an awesome nickname, trained by his mom, Mama's Boy. And Austin Williams looked pretty good, but he got caught a couple of times. He got tested. I thought he did a good job as well, winning the unanimous decision. It wasn't particularly lopsided. It wasn't particularly close. It was one of those fights where I think is good for both fighters. Austin Williams shows his pedigree, and Dennis Duggan shows that he can test the fighters. So again, if you have a chance to watch it, go check it out. Austin Williams has some good pop, has some good speed, but he gets a little bit reckless on the defense. It also could be because of Dennis Duggan's slightly unorthodox style and a depth of experience fighting the likes of Charlo, Groves, Durrell, Anthony. And so, he's fought a lot of Benavidez as well. That's right. He's fought a lot of good and world-class fighters. So the fact that Austin Williams was able to win a clear decision against them shows you that Williams should be somebody we're looking forward to seeing more of. Then I wound up switching to the Benavidez fight because, I think I said in the previous episode that I thought Jessica McCaskill was going to take the decision win against Barajas again, as Barajas is just reaching the end of her career at 39. So let's get to Benavidez versus Ellis. Benavidez stopped Ellis in the 11th round of their scheduled 12th round fight, and it was a fight that started off pretty competitive, and the longer it went, the more you were sure that Benavidez was just going to stop Ellis. Ellis made a good showing for himself, but he was the physically weaker and smaller guy. Benavidez looks huge in there. He's a big super middleweight, or at least he absolutely looks it at 6'1", 6'2". He's a big boy, and he's young, and he's got a lot of power, so this is a dangerous fighter at 168. Ronald Ellis was able to land early on. He's just not hard enough. I almost wonder if Ellis can come down to 160. I think he'll be a bigger threat. But he just seemed a little undersized over here. Like you're watching the entire time, and these shots, they weren't really moving Benavidez when he would land when Ellis would land cleanly on him. And Benavidez, he still has a few issues. He gets hit a lot, especially early on. The announcers were talking about how he's a slow starter, but against better and stronger fighters, this is going to be a big problem. Those first 4 or 5 rounds, he let a lot of shots through. When he throws combinations. He starts throwing from the waist. Look at his hands. His chin goes right up. He stands straight up, and he throws those shots sometimes from the waist. You do this against Golovkin. You do this against Canelo. This is over. This is not going to last. I would actually like to see Benavidez versus Golovkin. I know there's no chance this fight happens, but I think that would be quite an interesting fight, just to see just how much Golovkin has left and to see the kind of fight that he can give him, especially early on. I think Benavidez would be in a lot of trouble against that type of fighter. I think Canelo's way too early in the discussion for Benavidez. He has a significant room to improve, especially on his defense. And if this were against Canelo rather than against Ellis, and he threw those shots, this would end poorly for him. Canelo's going to time him. He's going to counter him. And when he catches him with his chin up in the air like this would end poorly for Benavidez. So I think there is room to grow before we get a Canelo fight. I just hope this doesn't become one of those things like where Golovkin was a little bit aged by the time we got that first Canelo fight, and maybe Canelo will be a little bit aged by the time we get the first Benavidez fight. So, again, Benavidez is a good 168-pounder. I'm being critical because when you're dealing with a prospect at this level, one who is already at the world-class level, you want to be more obvious and more harsh with the flaws, because this is where they're really going to matter. And this is where if you're betting, this is where you really want to try and exploit to see maybe if you can get a good deal on the casino. If the casino misprices a fighter or overvalues a fighter, I think these kind of analyses are important. Now, regarding Benavidez moving up to 175, I don't really see this being as a good idea. Some of the ways that Benavidez wins this fight is that he has physical advantages over his foes, as you saw with Ellis. He won't have these same advantages at 175. They're going to be big, strong men there. Think Smith Jr., think Arthur, think even an aged Kovalev. These are bigger guys. They're also going to be 6'2", 6'1". And Benavidez is going to have to rely power for power in a bigger weight class, and that's almost never a good idea, as your power will decrease as you move up weight classes. So he's going to become relatively a weaker fighter, and this is going to hamper his ability to bully some of these fighters as he does at 168, as you saw with Ellis, just walking him down round after round. And Ellis was fighting a war of attrition. There was practically no chance he was going to win in the second half of the fight, given the way that the fight was unfolding, and you just saw Benavidez take a little bit more from him. Every step he would match. He would just kept throwing these power shots against the smaller man, and little by little Ellis gave. And then I think the stoppage was good. It could have even been stopped in between the 10th and 11th round. I don't think it needed to go as far as it did, but again, you want to give your fighter every chance to win. Now, let's talk about the highlight of the night. Let's talk Estrada versus Chocolatito Roman Gonzalez. Another excellent fight. This is currently the fight of the year. I know we're only in March, but this is a great contender already for fight of the year. Just an amazing effort from both fighters. An unbelievable amount of shots thrown. I think it was over 2,500. It was nonstop action from the first to the 12th round. It was a close fight. I know a lot of people are screaming robbery. Now, I thought that one scorecard, 117-111 for Estrada, was really wide. I personally had Chocolatito winning, 115-113, but I could see it have gone the other way. I could see 115-113 for Estrada. Hell, I could see 116-112 either way. There were so many close fights. I wasn't scoring too attentively. I was watching, just enjoying. Sometimes it's funner just to watch. And I was messaging my friend, and we had completely different scorecards. We were both watching, and it was, so I knew right away, given that he had it 116-112 Estrada, and I had a 115-113 Gonzalez, I knew right away that, oh boy, any decision is going to be met with screams of robbery. This was no robbery. But like I said, I thought the 117-111 card was too wide, and I did think Gonzalez won. I thought Gonzalez landed the better shots. I thought he turned back time a little bit, to tell you the truth. First, if you go back and you listen to the previous episode, I said Estrada's going to win. I even messaged my friend saying, I think Estrada wins by TKO in the mid-rounds. boy, was I shocked when I'm watching this fight and I'm seeing the older 33-year-old Chocolatito Gonzalez changing angles, landing the crisper, cleaner shots, at least to my eyes. And what an amazing fight. I mean, I thought Gonzalez won those first. I thought he won four of the first five rounds. I think I only gave Estrada one round there, if I'm not mistaken. Just a marvelous show of will and resilience by both fighters to keep throwing as fire's coming back. These weren't like one-sided affairs. Like, oh, Gonzalez wins one round, Estrada wins another round, and kind of fighters taking rounds off. No. Both fighters are going nonstop, just slamming that gas pedal down and throwing. This was an unbelievable amount of shots that they threw. 2,500 shots? Wow. That's probably more shots than David Haye threw in his entire career. That's insane. That close. I thought Gonzalez won that 12th round. I thought it sealed the deal personally for me. So obviously I was a little bit disappointed when I heard the scorecards. But I don't think it's a robbery. I think the decision should have went the other way, but I think, you hear robbery all the time now, and that's not a robbery, guys. That's not a robbery. An attempted robbery was that 114 Floyd Mayweather Canelo scorecard. That was an attempted robbery. This was a decision that I thought went to the wrong guy, but it's within the realm of possibility. And like I said, my friend had a completely different scorecard from me. Whereas I had Gonzalez winning, he had Estrada winning. So this isn't a robbery. Let's talk about some of these rounds. In the 12th that I thought Gonzalez sealed it, he landed 55 of 158 punches thrown to Estrada's 40 of 150 punches thrown. They threw over 300 punches in the 12th. The 12th round. Not the first, not the 5th, but the 12th. This just goes to show you how much both guys wanted it. And, Gonzalez was the much more accurate fighter throughout this entire fight, and the 12th round shows it. He landed at 35% in the 12th round. Other big standout rounds for him are going to be that 4th round where both landed an even amount, but Gonzalez threw much more, copy box. And then the 7th round where both guys landed 47 and 48 punches respectively for Estrada and Gonzalez, throwing again almost 300. They threw 280 shots. This is a nonstop fight. This is a fight by Gonzalez is one of the greatest at this weight class, and he's going in the Hall of Fame. This is a first ballot Hall of Famer. This is a guy who you could make an argument it should be still undefeated. There should have never been a rematch with Srisaket. There should have never been a rematch. He won that first fight. Had he been awarded that first fight, there would be no rematch. You never lose that fight by KO. And this fight, well, like I said, I thought Gonzalez won. In my eyes, there's a timeline here where Roman Gonzalez is pound for pound number one fighter and has not lost. There is that timeline. It exists in my head, at least. Let me repeat it. There is a timeline where Roman Gonzalez is the undefeated pound-for-pound number one fighter in the world. Now, all jokes aside, let me get back to the fight, and let's talk Estrada. All that praise for Chocolatito, it stands, but this isn't to take away anything from Estrada, who himself fought brilliantly. And there were many rounds where I was when it looked like he was starting to hurt and kind of like walk down Chocolatito. And I was getting a little worried. I was like, oh man, this is it. This is what I mean when I say a 33-year-old flyweighter. Like, he's aged. He's done. You don't get a career resurgence this late at that weight class. And this was a prime 30-year-old Estrada. And there were points, like I said, in the fight where I'm like, in a round or two, this is it. Estrada's taking over now. And my friend is messaging me telling me, well, all those shots that Gonzalez is landing, Estrada's really, rolling with them. They're not even really affecting him. Maybe I started to believe it. So, like I said, this was a close fight. both fighters showed you things in there, showed you parts of themselves in the ring that not everyone has. Not all fighters have this. Not all fighters can do this. 2,500 punches, like it's almost impossible to really imagine. You have to see this fight. You have to go and watch it. If you have the zone, like I'm going to be rewatching this fight this week. Again, a little more clear eye, really focusing on analyzing what I'm seeing. As yesterday I was just a fan. I was just a fan enjoying a rematch that I've wanted to see for 9 years against who I consider potentially the best flyweight of all time. So this fight was amazing. Like I said, this is currently the fight of the year, at least for me. I can't think of a better fight this year. And again, props to both these guys. Props to Estrada. Props to Chocolatito, our Hall of Fame flyweight. Now, next, for Estrada, he is having the rematch against Srisake, who he beat two years ago now by unanimous decision. Srisake won yesterday. I saw that fight. He looked pretty good. He's Srisake's kind of guy. He's a powerful guy. He's got those giant calves, but he's got a couple of holes in his defense. He could be outboxed. Like I told you, I thought Gonzalez outboxed him that first fight. Estrada already outboxed him. I like Estrada to win again, but with these kind of fights, you don't have too many of them in your career. This fight with Roman Gonzalez, this takes that out of both fighters. So you may get a slightly weakened Estrada in his rematch against Srisake. Now, you want to talk about a third fight with Chocolatito? I don't want to see a third fight between Estrada and Chocolatito. I don't. This is one of those things where I don't necessarily even want to see a Golovkin third fight against Canelo. One fighter is aging faster than the other. And every single hard, long fight that they have adds another year on top of the many years they already have. Boxing is a sport with real people who have real lives and real bodies. This isn't a video game. You can't just reload and let's go again. To paraphrase Heraclitus, the same fighter doesn't step into the same ring twice. And this would be the case with Gonzalez and Estrada for a third fight. I think Gonzalez certainly left a little bit of something in that ring tonight at 33 years old. And the third fight you're not going to get the same Gonzalez in that ring. Now let's talk about some sad news over the weekend. Marvelous Marvin Hagler had passed away over the weekend. He was the greatest middleweight of all time. Just a legendary fighter. Took part in what is considered maybe one of the best fights of all time with his destruction of Tommy Hearn. Beat Roberto Duran. Had a controversial loss against Leonard. And I don't know if you guys have seen that fight, but, to this day, people will argue who won that fight. Do you like Leonard's opening 10-second and closing 10-second frames? Or do you like the other 2.5 minutes of fighting that Marvin Hagler would dominate? I mean, he was a legendary fighter who retired early and who went to star movies. Actually became a B movie kind of actor, but just an unbelievable loss for boxing. And it's always tragic when you lose a great in the sport because you lose a part of the live history of the sport. Someone that I trained with a few times actually wound up getting knocked out by Hagler, and it would tell the story to me. So rest in peace, champ. Some other news, Danny Garcia recently had an interview with Eric Kelly saying that he wants to go to 154 to claim a title in his third weight class. I don't know about that. 147 seemed like the absolute peak for Danny Garcia in terms of how high he can move up. He was clearly not the same fighter at 147 that he was at 140 when he beat Lucas. I don't see this being a good move. I know he mentioned a Thurman rematch, which could be reasonable, but outside of that, I don't like 154 for Danny at all. Those guys are bigger, faster, stronger than him up there. It's not the way. I mean, weight classes exist for a reason. Even at 147, I thought that was, he went from being like this real, like could unify at 140 to kind of just a title challenger at 147 to, I don't know how many wins he can catch. I don't know who can beat in the top 10 at 154. You know, I'm looking at the top 10, like Arislandi Lara, no. Maybe Liam Smith? Giant Jared Hurd? No. Charlo? No. I mean, these fighters are just too big. It's not so much that he doesn't have a relative skill set equivalent to these fighters. It's that he's just too small. You know, he was an absolute just amazing fighter 140. I'll never forget that victory over Lucas. I was sure Lucas was going to kill him. And to see Danny not only win by stop him, what he did to Amir Khan was, it was wonderful. Wins over Zab Judah. I mean, yeah, there was that shit show with Rod Salka, which was, I don't know where they got Rod Salka, but he was a killer at 140. But, you know, he was just not the same fighter at 147. Yeah, he had a close fight with Keith Thurman. You know, one split decision loss. He had the Sean Porter fight where he was a little bit bullied by Porter. And, you know, he lost to Earl Spence, where he was game, but he can't beat the very top of that class at 147. So now we expect him to go up and beat the champs at 154. Now, he said rematch with Thurman at 154, which I think he could beat Thurman. You saw that in the first fight. And now Thurman, you know, he's had his injuries, the loss to Pacquiao. So, I mean, that's a reasonable fight. But to actually fight the champs at 154, I really wish the best for Danny, but I don't see 154 to be a boon for him, to tell you the truth, guys. Now let's end this cast talking about Tyson Fury. All right, so now we're hearing rumors that the Joshua fight is falling apart. It can't get signed. Tyson Fury's drinking. He's saying he's jerking off all the time and all this other bullshit. Now, I think this is the Tyson Fury show. He's selling, always be selling. That's Tyson Fury. That's the character he plays, or maybe not, or maybe he really needs to stay active. You know, he's had a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol. So for him, maybe the devil's playground are his idle hands. So he needs to get at that fight. And now they're talking about, well, potentially he will fight Wilder for a third fight. But you know, most people say, oh, of course, he's gonna kill Wilder like he did in the second fight. But if this Tyson Fury gets drunk again, starts doing drugs again, well, hell, it was Wilder that nearly killed him that first fight. If we get the same Tyson Fury as we got in the first Wilder fight, then Wilder's back in the game. So we got a fight on our hands. Wilder's only got to catch him once. I don't know by what miracle Tyson Fury got up in that 12th round of the first fight, but I don't know if he'll get up again. Wilder has to catch him just once. We've seen it. So if Tyson Fury is not all mentally there, if he's drinking, if he's on drugs again, hell, we may get a fat, slow, lethargic Tyson Fury in the third fight, and then we'll see Wilder knock him out.
You got knocked the fuck out!
Now, of course, this is all speculation, and like I said, it could be just an act. Tyson Fury's trying to sell anything. So, I don't know. But that's going to be it for me. If you haven't, please go and check out the Estrada versus Chocolatito fight. It is the fight of the year currently. It was an amazing fight. I'm going to watch it again soon, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Talk about it later in the week. But that's going to be it for me. It's over!
I'm gonna go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, though!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy, you know, just